Hi guys, my name is Usman Olomu. I am a character animator from London and I work in the VFX and feature animation industry, and I just wanted to do like a breakdown of this pretty cool animation and visual effects collaborative that I did with a bunch of other artists. So a couple of people have been asking me to do breakdowns, so I figured I'd just do this breakdown. Let's get into it. Before we get started, let's go into the animation. Um, so the initial inspiration for this shot actually came from a weird place. It was originally I originally meant to sort of transition between doing visual effects and getting into feature film. So I wanted to do, the animation in visual effects is very reference heavy, which means that you have to use a lot of video reference to kind of inspire your performance, especially if you're doing visual effects and you're doing a lot of creature work, quadruped creature work with four-legged animals and so on and so forth. But because I wanted to sort of transition from VFX into feature animation, which is more, cartoony style, I wanted to try and see if I could do an animation without being so heavily reliant on reference. So this animation actually was mostly done. Let's see, it was mostly done freeform. Freeform basically means I was just like using the animation principles, squash and stretch, anticipation, so on and so forth, things like that to do the animation that you see before you. So this actually wasn't much reference used in this at all, actually, which is not how I usually animate. Reference is very, very important, but like I said, I wanted to transition from VFX to feature, and I wanted to see if I could do animation that was more freeform as opposed to just heavily reliant on reference as you would do in visual effects. So this is the first draft of the shot here. If I just play it, it literally was just an idea that I had in my head of having Elsa kind of, shoot these sort of ice beams out of her hand and just kind of use her powers. And the story was that she would be fending off some sort of threat off screen. I didn't want to do anything too complicated, especially because it was something that I was doing in my personal time in between shows. I was actually working on the His Dark Materials whilst I was doing this, so it was pretty cool. And I was working, so I didn't want to actually spend too much time overcomplicating this animation by doing too much. So this is actually just really a simple animation test, really. It went on and became something else, which is pretty cool, but I just wanted to show you guys how simple I started. So initially, with this animation, the idea, I'm not someone that does thumbnails, which is in the animation industry almost blasphemous, but everyone has their own unique way of working. I don't really do too much thumbnails. I should probably do thumbnails, but the story here was that she sees something, right, and then she reacts by shooting off her ice blast, and then shooting off some more. She calms down a bit, she notices something in the distance, she reacts, and then she shoots more ice blasts. Now this is actually an interesting thing here in the industry. When I got to this point in the animation, I felt like, okay, I'm done, but I feel like something more could happen. I feel like it's not quite there yet, so I did what you usually do in the animation industry, which is to just ask for feedback. So I went to my friends who are also professionals in the industry, and you can't be too scared of showing people your work. You just have to show it to them, and that's where we end up with Sync Sketch, which is here, which is a different animation that you're going to see here, because what you'll notice is if you look at the drawings that my friends have done, and they've also done like written feedback here as well. So what you'll notice is this drawing was initially the note here says have her take a step back, have her take a step to get forward, so to give a better sense of action. So as you can see, it's a bit more of a dynamic pose here, with the arm out here and the arm here. Let me draw in a different color. Let me see if that works. Maybe white. Yeah, that works. So there's a bit more of a dynamic pose here. You know, the legs are a bit more out as opposed to being a little bit too profile. So these are one of the drawings that I sort of took on board as feedback in order to make the starting pose a little bit more dynamic in general, so we can have something a little bit more pushed. And again, as you can see, there's more drawings here. The arm, the original arm position was here. Not the best. But then my friend Ere, who's another animator from the industry, drew this pose in red, as you can see here, which is pretty cool. And I was like, oh yeah, you know what, I'll stick with that idea. Let me get something working a little bit. Yeah, and it seems to be more dynamic, which is pretty cool. And this was actually probably the most influential bit of feedback here. So this was where my friend pointed me to look at Frozen, obviously, where this was inspired from. This was actually from the movie, not this animation. He was actually talking about, take a look at the movie and see how much they pushed the poses. And even though this is a very rough drawing, the terminology we use in animation is called line of action. What you see is when you get this clear line where a character is clearly doing something that's directing the audience's eye, right? This is really cool. So what I could see from this drawing was, oh man, you know, we've got this clear line of action that makes it feel dynamic, and it makes it feel like she's using her ice powers to really bring these guys, these ice these ice things, I don't even know what to call them, stalactites, stalagmites, I'm not sure, but just these ice shards, if you will, to really make it feel to the audience that she's really bringing that around to deal with the threat, right? Because the original way that I had it before was almost a very sort of a lazy kind of just sweeping of the power with the original hand here, right? So then I went ahead and got the feedback from my friend, and he did this really cool drawing. It's very rough, but this is the kind of thing that we animators sort of nerd out about. This great, again, great line of action that makes things feel more dynamic, right? And it feels really good, and you're like, ah, that's what will make the animation sell really, really well. So I looked at that and I saw it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to change the start of my animation to match more of what that drawing is demonstrating. And as you can see, there's more extreme poses here. Really cool. I think in the end I probably didn't go too far in this. Even though it was feedback, this kind of pose to me felt a little bit too much like the Incredible Hulk, if that makes sense. And it didn't really fit, you know, Elsa's sort of movement in general. I wanted her to be poised but graceful at the same time. So I didn't really, you know, you can take the feedback with a grain of salt. You don't always have to go for it. You just have to be open to it. So this was a pose that I probably didn't put in the final animation. So here we have another one here as well. Really great pose. It's basically taking the original pose that I had, but just doing something a little more with it, like the arm here, and just making it like work better, right? This is pretty cool. Again, another pose that was drawn by one of my friends, and you can see again with the written feedback here, some people prefer to do draw-overs and some people prefer to do feedback, written feedback, like my friend Joe here, which is pretty cool. So yeah, and if we can keep going through, there's another drawing there, kind of matches what I'm doing. I guess there's a difference in the head. So I just wanted to take you guys through the sort of kind of the different stages of the animation. It's not a complete thorough breakdown. It's more of a breakdown of just a general gist of how I got from where I was in the animation to where I ended up in the final result. So after taking the feedback, again you can see I'm just going to scroll through these drawings here. This is pretty cool. Really nice drawing. I think in the end I probably went with more of this, but didn't really have the head go too far back there. Notes on the hair, drawing on the hair and the overlap and how to fix that. So the hair was not actually simulated. It was, I had to keyframe it. I tried to be lazy and I tried to simulate it with some tutorial, but the results were terrible. And in the end, I was like, you know what? I just have to I have to keyframe this thing on my own and just try to make it work. So that's pretty cool. So it's cool that I have drawings here as well for how the hair should work. And then she looks shocked. This is one of my favorite things about this animation, if I do say so myself. This pose here is really cool. This sort of exemplifies the graceful, poised feeling that I wanted her to have. This kind of like really sort of straight arm with holding the pose there, you know, the fist, all of this stuff. You won't see that in the final animation, this area here, because it's all covered in a cloth simulation, but it's all really, really good. Also, I just want to point out that I think this stuff, the hips are wider in this character in general to make the cloth simulation work better. I think that's why they're wider in general. I wouldn't actually pose this like this. So I think for the sake of cloth simulation and effects, this was actually done on purpose. I'm not sure, but that's my rationale for that, because I wouldn't actually pose it like that. It's a bit too wide. Not that I'm judging her body, just something about that looks a bit off. But anyway, yeah, this is one of my favorite poses. I love this pose where she's sort of composed a little bit. You know, she does her thing, she's composed a little bit, and then she notices something. She's like, oh my god, there's an even bigger threat over here. Now I've got to use double the amount of power, which is pretty cool. And so this is another thing here, which is pretty cool. I think, yeah, this one. This was a great drawing. Again, very simplistic in the drawing, so it's not like I'm looking at the drawing and going, oh my god, it's the most amazing thing ever. But it's that line of action that my friend really wanted me to push. Again, he's like a really talented animator who's working in the industry. He's worked on Hotel Transylvania, and you know, he's worked at Pixar and places like that. I hope he doesn't see this and think that I'm name dropping or anything. But yeah, he's really cool, and he did these sort of draw-overs. Again, this line of action that I've drawn in white really helps to, you know, sell the fact that she would be really pushing against whatever she's fighting against with her powers. Because in the original, I just have this, which is cool, but it's not the most dynamic, right? Her back is really straight. It doesn't really feel like she's pushing up against anything, right? Which you would have with this more curved shape of the spine, as you have in the drawing. So this is another thing that made the animation feel a little bit more dynamic. Copying that drawing and then adding a bit of camera shake and doing my own thing, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. I don't want to sound like I'm too into my own animation, but it's pretty cool. It's one of the best animations I've done, even though it's not professional work. It is professional level, I guess, but it's not something that I've done as a result of studio work. It's just something I did in my personal time. This is something that's interesting. This in animation is what we call twinning. So obviously when I was working on this, I must have gotten tunnel visioned at some point. So my friend pointed this out, as you can see with the green lines. The idea with twinning is that you don't want in animation to make your character's arms, legs, or whatever feel like they're moving at the same time and have the exact same shape. Otherwise it just doesn't make the animation look that great. It's something that, twinning is something that can happen in real life, but animation is all about the illusion of life, right? So we want to take that and make it something a little bit more interesting. So we visually try to avoid this thing that we call twinning here. So I got rid of that. And then, yeah, man, looks pretty cool. And then some notes. Yeah, this is another one. Side profile drawing of how they wanted the pose to look. But the back here is a bit too straight, so want a bit more curvature. Yeah, so this is the note that my friend left. He was like, I really want to feel the power behind these blasts, right? So this is the note that he was doing here with the drawing. And then when he goes here, oops, when he goes here, that's when he leaves the note. So yeah, that's that process. After I took the feedback, I then went ahead and created something different. Oh no, that's still the same. Ooh, actually, let's go here. So this is the final result in terms of animation. I'm just going to turn off the textures because it makes it easier to see. So I copied the note. Let me just get rid of all these other things. See if I can find this robe and stuff. And gown. None of it's coming off. Okay, well, let's see. I think it was this one. This one. Anyway, we'll just go here. So yeah, I did do the legs, the note with the legs, but again, the cloth simulation is there, so that's kind of blocking everything. But it was a bit more dynamic, and as you can see, I separated the arms a bit more here. Hopefully you can see my notes. Separate the arms a bit more here. Now I have this, I love doing finger detail in animation. It's pretty cool. And yeah, it's awesome, man. It's pretty cool. I look at my work now because I used to use Blender like 10 years ago, and I was doing very shoddy animation. So it's kind of nice to see my progress. And I've got an indie industry. I'm working professionally, and I'm doing this kind of stuff. So if the 10-year version of me from 10 years ago could see what I'm doing now, he'd be pretty excited. So this is pretty cool. And as you can see here, oh man, that dynamic pose. So this is the part where I hit that dynamic pose that you can see here. I think there you go. So obviously it's dynamic here as well, which is pretty cool. And I tried to get that here as well. So obviously, you know, that's a 2D drawing here, so I had to accommodate it for 3D and make it work here. But it's pretty cool. I think it works really well. It works quite successfully. And as you can see here, I've got the arm in a little bit more, getting a bit more of that sort of a hero kind of pose. Nice transition here with the hand. Again, I suppose it's a good thing to be a fan of your own work. This is nice. So this is cool. This was more yeah, let me go in here. Actually, let's see if I can find another file there. Yeah, so I'm in perspective here. Let's turn on the rig controls. So these actual, you know, I tried to make this look like effects work as much as possible, but I'm not an effects artist. I'm an animator. I specialize specifically in character animation. So I literally just took a cylinder, which is what this was, and let's see if I can grab this, whichever one this is. Yeah, I took a cylinder and I literally just animated it scaling, right? That's all I did. So some people were asking me, how did you do the effects? And I'm like, no, I just literally animated a cylinder and had it changing color. Turn that off. So that white beam that happens just before the main blast was kind of inspired by Dragon Ball Z. So I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, and I was like, oh man, this is really cool. So I'll do something like that here. Same thing there. Again with the white before the main blast happens. That's pretty cool. And as you can see from the hair, again, I tried to simulate it, but the simulation results were abysmal. So I ended up keyframing the whole thing myself. Pretty cool. Right, pretty cool. So I had to do like a what we call there's pose to pose, there's straight ahead, right, and then there's like a hybridized version in between. So with this particular hair animation, I had to do it straight ahead because I was the overlap was highly dependent upon the main character's movement. If I did it pose to pose, that could work, but I probably would make life a lot more difficult for myself. And for me, my brain just naturally tends to work more in a straight ahead animation style as opposed to a pose to pose. I don't know why, it's unusual, but especially in CG, because mostly stop motion animators do straight ahead, but that's just how my brain works for animation. I tend to do straight ahead mostly. Yeah, so yeah, it's cool. Yeah, this is when I think this is the one I submitted before I got the notes. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Let's turn on the textures, or maybe I just hit 6 on my keyboard to play that another time. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then in the background, I literally just downloaded that from the internet. Just typed in 3D background, 3D environment, and I got something like this mountainous thing, which looks cool. I'm not even sure if the horizon line here makes any sense, but you know, I'm an animator. When I put this on my reel, the supervisors, the animation supervisors, won't be concentrating on the environment, they'll be concentrating on the actual animation. So after I got the notes, this is the final animation that you see here with all the effects and stuff like that that I added in there. Not the best effects, just, you know, something to communicate to the audience that she's actually got something coming out of her hands. And with this particular rig, it came with a video tutorial on how to do simulations for the cloth that we see here. So let's go ahead and turn on the textures. Let's go turn on the two-sided lighting. Yep, it's on. So I followed that tutorial on how to get the simulation on the cloth. Again, something that just makes it feel a bit more dynamic, makes her feel like she's a bit more in the environment, right? There's wind, there's snow, all these sort of particle effects are happening. Really, really cool stuff. Like I said, you know, I was actually pretty pleased with the result because I've been studying animation. I've been studying it for a long time. I went to Animation Mentor, which is a great animation school. So, yeah, man, this is really cool. And then I finally got that pose in, right? So this pose that my friend drew, this awesome pose. Oh, not this one. Let's see. This one. So I finally got this in the animation, and it made her feel a little bit more like she was fighting against something, and she was pushing up against it. And then I had the camera kind of pull in, track into her face a little bit more, just to get that intensity into it. Really cool. And I kept the animation of the camera relatively simple. So essentially, the camera animation looks convincing, I believe, because of just a simple rule that I follow, which is, you know, the animation, the character leads the camera, never the other way around. Okay, so if it's a situation where she's moving forward, screen left here, and then the camera sort of moves in that direction. It's like, oh, what's going on over there? Right? And then she goes ahead and does something else, screen right, and the camera catches up a little bit just to go screen right, and then screen left again, and the camera goes screen left. So it's this kind of thing that makes camera animation feel more natural, because usually, whether it's on set or virtually or whatever, the actor isn't going to go over to the cameraman and say, hey, by the way, here's how I want you to film me. When I look up, I want you to follow me, 2.5 seconds later. It's usually the cameraman is reacting to the nuance of the actor's performance, right? That's what makes that sort of handheld camera feel more natural. So that was that's just that one simple rule that I follow with the camera. Again, you can see it happening here, and the rule of thirds again. This is really something that's cool. She's mostly on screen right, and then there's all this stuff going on the screen left, which is pretty cool. And then as she leads, this is very important here, the camera doesn't just randomly go to the right. Right? She's leading that action by going to the right, and the camera catches up with her. Right? So we get to a point where she's mostly screen right here, occupying this third of the screen. Right? Then she leads the action, and the camera follows her. It doesn't follow her at the same time. It doesn't track with her. It just follows her. right? That's kind of the way you sort of make camera action feel a little bit more believable. Hopefully I'm not rambling on for too long. But then by the time the camera catches up, she's pretty much in the middle of the screen again, right? It's pretty cool. So she's dead center focused now. And then there's just that camera shake, and then her head is shaking. Ah, man, this is pretty cool. Yeah, sometimes I look at this and I'm like, did I do this? Yeah, I did it. This is pretty cool. So, yeah, man, I'm pretty pleased with that. That's so cool. That's really cool. And then, yeah, that was the final result. I don't think I can play this in real time because of all the effects going on. So I can turn a few things off. Let's see. And particles, turn that off, maybe. Nah, it's not going to work in real time, especially with the screen recorder I'm using. But it's pretty cool. And then I also saw in the comment section on the YouTube videos that I uploaded, people wanted to know how I did these, right? These sort of ice particles, icicles, I call them here. I don't think they are icicles, but these are actually, they're relatively simple. Let's see, let me see if I can go back and demonstrate what I did. Go to create, go to polygons, and then let's go to pyramid, right? And then literally I created a pyramid, obviously with a different texture. Let's just put a different texture on that. Oops, put a different texture on that. Material, assign material, just put a lambda on that. Right, so what I did with these, I literally just created a pyramid, basic primitive shape, and scaled it, right, duplicated it, moved it, rotated it, just to give it that sense of like ice-like spikes and shards of ice, and then scaled it at a different scale again, something like this. Maybe that's a bit too much. Duplicated it again, rotated that, created something else like this. Literally, that's literally what I did to create these guys here. It's a little bit more refined here with these ones, but that's literally how I created that. So for the person who was asking me how I did that, let's cancel that. For the person who was asking me how I did that, that's how I did it. And then I just gave them blue textures, and I made those textures transparent to make them feel like huge shards of ice. So that was pretty cool. And then I posted this stuff on LinkedIn. Let's see if I can find this kind of stuff here on my page. If I can find it. If I can't find it, I'll just move on real quick. I posted it on LinkedIn, and people saw it and they liked it. It's just pretty cool, which is nice. Let's see if I can go to see activity, right, and then posts. Let's see. There's a really old post by now. No, it's not there anymore. Let's see. There it is. So this is the original post. A lot of people liked it. It was pretty cool. I was pleased with the results, and I thought it was nice. And then, you know, this industry being a highly collaborative industry that is inspiring and spontaneous and all this other stuff, I got a message, a private message from an effects and environment artist by the name of Jesse Gozo. And he was pretty cool, and he was like, hey man, I'm really inspired by animation. I was wondering if I could do, I was wondering if I could do effects on the animation. And I was like, what? Dude, that would be so awesome. Yeah man, do effects. I gave him the files. He did an effects. He got another artist on it by the name of Van Lee. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Van Lee or Levan. And she did lighting and comping and stuff like that. And so that's how we ended up with the final result, which just looks amazing. It's so cinematic. Oh man, look at that. Let's play that one more time. So cool. And so she went with the story. The actual lighting artist, Van Lee, she was inspired by Frozen 2, obviously. So there's the scene in Frozen 2 where Elsa is going up against Bruni, which is the fire spirit, that sort of lizard creature. And he has this sort of pinkish kind of fiery energy. And so she kind of followed that story and was inspired by that. So she has all this stuff going on, following the same kind of direction that I went with my animation. And as you can see, this pink blast here, oh man, that's so cool. Catches her attention and she's like, oh my god, I gotta extinguish this fire a little bit more. And just look at the work. And there's another breakdown video here, which is pretty cool. Let's play this one. So this is like a breakdown video of what those guys did. Amazing artists. I'll leave links to their LinkedIn and Vimeo accounts in the description below. But this is really, really cool. So they've done this. Let's see. Oops. Is it not working? Technical glitches. No. Let's see if I can get another version of this working. Pretty cool stuff though. Right. Let's get this up and running here. So this is pretty cool. Really cool. They did like a cool breakdown. As you can see where they do the lighting, the effects, the environment, all that stuff. Really cool stuff, and it felt they did such a wonderful job making the whole thing feel cinematic and finalized. And I guess, you know, the benefit in the end is that they get to put something on their reel, and I as an animator get to put this on my reel as an animator and say this is super cool. So yeah, that's just a simple breakdown of how I went from creating the animation to getting the final result, and then this final rendered version, which is pretty cool, if I do say so myself. Hopefully if I do another project in the future, like a personal project, I'll love to have those guys work on it again and do something, because it's so cool, so cool. The final version of this is so cool. And I did post it on YouTube, but unfortunately YouTube, the compression kind of ruined the quality of the original video. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and just leave this here. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video as a sort of a breakdown of you know, this Elsa animation that I did, and I collaborated with these amazing effects and lighting and environment artists to get this kind of thing working really well. Yeah man, so this is subscribe to the channel. This is not the most professional outro, but you know, there's a first time for everything. I'll get better at this with time. But yeah, subscribe to the channel if you want more stuff like this. In the future I'll be uploading more stuff. Right now I'm currently really busy. I'm working on a feature film, a Terry Pratchett feature film, The Amazing Maurice, which is going to come out sometime next year, which is going to be pretty cool. So I'm busy with that, but right now this is pretty cool. Hopefully you guys like it. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll upload more stuff in the future. So I'm an animator. I'll be doing mostly animation content, animation reviews of like stuff that I find inspiring. I'll also be looking at like reviewing my own work, I guess, because I can criticize my own work without sounding like an asshole. Okay, there's that. Yeah, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to this very unprofessional video. This is not how YouTube works. I'll get better. I will get better at this stuff. But for now, enjoy. Hopefully you enjoyed that breakdown. And yeah, see you guys next time. Bye.